So welcome to this episode of the Holly Hughes Podcast. Today I am really excited. I don't know when I'm not excited, but I have Ellen McGinty here today, who is an author and an editor. She's a woman who lives in Tokyo, Japan, right? You're in Tokyo or outside Tokyo?
The Tokyo metropolis.
Tokyo proper. And everyone knows I'm obsessed with Korea, but she has lived in Japan for a very long time. And that culture has seeped into her. It breathes in her and her creativity. So welcome, Ellen, to my podcast. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, Holly, for that wonderful welcome. And it's lovely to be here with you because we have a long history too. So I'm quite excited.
We do. First of all, I would like to say, we met, it was back in the day when Brenda Drake, because I really feel like she deserves credit for Pitch Wars, but we were that was back in the day for people who don't write young adult fiction at all. It was a place where authors, not just YA, but all sorts, could go and pitch on Twitter when it was Twitter and get an agent. It was a contest. And you and I were like in Pitch Wars, Pit Mad, there was a few other Pit Slam. Yeah. All of the above. And I remember admiring you because you were always kind. You really are a kind person, which is what I also like about young adult authors in general, or people who typically write with or for children. There is a kindness and a camaraderie within our world that I don't know exists in other creative places, because we would watch people get their agents being similar to us. So it was very fun to cheer them on. But your journey to agenting was quite one. Do you want to share some of that story this morning?
Absolutely. It was quite a journey. I'm trying to figure out where to start with that.
Ooh, look how pretty. It's so pretty. I'm holding up The Water Child, which is what you were pitching when we first met.
It was so
I love this.
long
It
ago.
Smells good. Your book smells so good. I can tell you my perspective watching what you were dealing with, and then you can jump in if you're into that. Okay, so I also want to make sure everyone knows about all of her books. When this comes out, more of her books will be out. She is prolific. So she has The Water Child, Saints and Monsters, The Wayfinder, right? I said that right. And you have stories in anthologies, and your voice is very distinct. I think anyone can pick up one of them and be like, this is an Ellen story. It is the way you write. It is the words you choose. And there's a cleanness, but you're so dropped into setting and the emotional arc of your people. So that is, I thought, something you should know from a reader of yours.
You.
But I also remember this was very much the beginning, 10 plus years ago, in especially young adult fiction, where own voices started. And I have no problem with own voices, except I had a problem with what agents and the publishing industry was deciding who could tell a fictional story or how they could tell a fictional story. And for me, you are a person who's lived in Japan for how many years now?
It's been 8 years now.
Yeah. So you live there, you love the culture, it is part of you. And The Water Child has to do with the 2011 tsunami.
Yep. Right? And my in-laws were there at the time. Yeah.
And everyone's like, but you're not Japanese. And I was like, did you read it? Did you read it? Can we get past the surface level and go deeper? So I remember you having difficulty because who they thought should tell the story, what they should look like, was not who wrote this story. Was that your experience?
That was definitely my experience. And when I moved to Japan, it was 8 years ago, almost 9 years now. But my husband had been here his whole life. When he was a baby, graduated high school, then he moved to America for college. And so he had a long history in Japan. And then, his parents had been here for 35 plus years. So as a family, there was a big history there. And when I was in Japan is when I got my agent. And she was a fabulous agent. She really believed in my story. It was right at the beginning of Own Voices movement. And so we pitched it all excited. Um, and some really big publishers picked it up, like several of the big five. It went to acquisitions. And I started getting questions like, how long have you been in Japan? What does your family do in Japan? And really more specific ones than that. And I was answering them and kind of like, okay, I wonder, what's going on. They're just getting marketing information. And then my agent came back and she said, I don't think we can sell this book. She said, we were told you could be Thai and write about Japan and it would be okay. We could sell that, but you just can't be white. And hearing that was something that was actually said, was shocking to me. Because we're creatives, we want to create. No creative wants someone to say, you can't do that because of your skin, because of who you are as a person. It could be something other than skin color too, but you don't want someone pointing at like who you are and saying you're not qualified. Like, who is qualified to make art, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, like, we understand you want to care for culture. Like, you want to be someone who, shows respect and care. And I had sensitivity readers and all of that. But I just still remember that one comment from one of the editors at one of the big five and just thinking, wow, I really can't write anything that traditional publishing will accept right now because this is my world. Like, the world I live in is Japan. And the worlds I write are kind of, at that time, it was historical fiction. But then I shifted to fantasy because I thought, well, why don't I blend that East meets West, right? The experience I'm living right now into a fantasy setting and see, where that goes. But that took me years because I was so wounded by
Yeah.
just being told you can't create the art that you want to create.
I remember being really mad. I have an African American friend, right? And she was writing a space opera. And during the same time, they said, that's not the kind of book we need from you. And she's like, what do you mean? I write sci-fi, I write space opera. Like, this is everything I want. And I think for me, instead of feeling that there was inclusion or a different perspective on that genre, they just wanted her to write something like more like The Hate You Give.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I don't want to actually write that. I don't, that's not like what I'm interested in sharing.
There were
And
so
so
many
she had a
stories like
huge
that.
agent and they had a breakup because of it. So did you stay with your agent? Did they give up? Like, because you do a lot. You do a lot with how you get your work out there. So I'm curious.
So I ended up parting with my agent. We stayed for about 2 years after that when I started writing fantasy, and I was actually writing the last Wayfinder, which is my book that's releasing right now, and that I've done a Kickstarter for. And that book was so hard to write because it was my first fantasy book, and I was trying to explore the East meets West side of me, this kind
Mm-hmm.
of third culture, border walker, kind of like merging these two cultures, and it was difficult, and I was still battling with those wounds, and so I didn't finish it. And 2 years is a long time for an agent to wait on you, and so we decided, let's part ways and I'm going to figure out this writing journey, and make a plan.
I like that too. I parted ways. I got an agent during all of that as well. Our communication overall ended up not being good. She got mad at me. She's like, "Where's the next book?" I'm like, "I sent you the draft like 6 months ago." And she's like, "Oh, it was in my spam." And I was like, "Well, that says a lot, doesn't it?" Like, like that was an interesting learning process. I know so many authors now who never stay with just one agent, right? Like, it's that journey to get one, the like writing the thing, the querying, all of the heartache and ups and downs, the synopsis. Like, you got an R&R, I got a lot of R&Rs. And then ultimately what they always came back with is like, I don't know how to sell it. So you are selling your own work. And I think pretty successfully, right? Don't I think it's watching you online doing all your programs and your lives and how you communicate with your audience. Like, what made you start doing that? What gave you the bravery? Because it's brave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's something I write into my books, I think because I want to be brave. I don't think anyone sets out thinking like I am brave, and if they do, I applaud that person, but that's not me. I'm like I am afraid, and I'm choosing to step out, and that's bravery. Is facing that fear, right? Is making my heart stronger than that. And so what happened was I finished that book, and that fear was still speaking in my mind, and I said, I have to try. I have to get my work out there. That's what art is. There's this desperate need to create, to tell these stories. That's why we are artists. Um, I don't know if you've seen the meme. There's one of it's like this is an artist who says they love their work. Writers write because it's their passion, and then it shows like Hayao Miyazaki and other people just in agony. Um, and this is the truth. So I had to get this story. So I decided to query small presses because you can query without an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the big five, when you say traditional, there are the small presses, mid-size, and the big ones. And they're all very different, kind of campy. So you have to know which one you're aiming for. And I felt that traditional would still, meaning the big five, would not accept my work still because Own Voices was still fading out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, well, I'm going to go for the mid-size, small without an agent. I did that. I had about 100% request rate for the last
Wow.
Wayfinder, which should have told me something, but it wasn't romantasy enough. That book is a YA fantasy with a romantic subplot. And the industry has changed a lot since I first started querying, and it's a lot more fierce. And there's a lot more marketing that the editors are looking for. They're very specific in what they're hunting for in those slush piles. And so I had only one yes. Now, I hadn't been doing this long. I'd maybe a few months, and 5 full requests, just guesstimating right now.
That's pretty
Um,
good.
it's pretty good. And one yes. The yes was from a small publisher that had just started, and several friends recommended it. And they also shared some of my values. And so I thought, this feels safe. Let me go with
Mm.
that. And so I did and signed a contract and actually signed for 3 books because it was a series. And that ended up being a big mistake. And
Mm.
so this journey to, how do I self-publish like you see me doing now has taken very long because I took a little detour with a small press.
Yeah, I had a small press reach out to me as well for my book, Dear Dead Drunk Girl, which had gotten so many R&Rs, and my agent made me really rewrite it. And it was not the book. I was like, how come no one's buying it?
Mhm.
Like, if you were so for it. And then when I got my work back and I read my book, I was like, who wrote this? Like, I worked so hard to please what they were looking for that it stopped being the story of sisters trying to save each other. So
Right.
I have the final, I'm actually still editing it, but it's also hard because I wrote it forever ago and I write differently now, right? Hopefully my writing's gotten better. That's what I always hope. But there's still something in that book that I haven't let go of. So I keep saying I'm going to finish it, and my critique partner, my writing partner is like, Holly, have you done it? I was like, no, but I wrote 8,000 words of a new book, so I keep kind of going back and forth. But I do believe in that story, and in the story that it originally was, which was not about a bad guy coming in. It wasn't about making my main character so unlikable that she was irredeemable, like when really horrible characters were like popular, so they made me make her so horrible instead of the truth was she was in so much pain and sad. There's a fine line right between that. So I think that's fascinating. I would love to know more because I know your faith is very important to you, right? It's part of your work where you are. So how does that come into play in like living in Japan, and how does it influence like how you absorb their storytelling? Because I watch like J dramas, right? Like I watch some of them and
Mhm.
anime and stuff. So there is a very distinct way that Japanese share story, right? And the themes in their storytelling. And I'm wondering how that blends with your faith and like what you believe and how you experience being there.
Yeah. So this is always something I'm like, how much do I share about this? But I am a pastor's wife. And
Yeah.
so that surprises people when they're like, wait, you write, young adult romantic fantasy with dragons and dark curses, and what is this, right? Um, and so it's really fun. And living in Japan, I think people forget about culture. They think that culture is just this like one big pot, and that's it. Like all Japanese are the same, all Americans are this way. And of course, we would say, oh no, we don't think that way. But we do generalize, in our heads often. But Japan has a lot of different pockets, and there's a Christian community in Japan as well. And there are, historical Christians in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And I read a lot of their stories, and not just testimonies, but Japanese fiction writers who are believers, and philosophers, who are Japanese Christians. And so there's this whole culture subset, of processing Japanese culture in a Christian way. And so that is kind of how I view Japan, is through that lens. And even in that community, it's still divided. I don't think there's a community that's not doesn't have different interpretations of things. For example, going to a shrine. Like there are some Japanese Christians who will not set foot in a shrine at
Ooh.
all, so they'll choose to stay back. There are others who will go in, but they just won't pray, right? And so same thing with like at the family altar. Some people might pray to Jesus there, or some might just not, stand in front of it at all, or might just like clean the sites during
Oh.
like Obon or things.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's different ways people, practice, but the thing is that they can still see beauty in the culture. Like they're not separate. We tend to think of Christianity as like Western, but it started in Israel, and it's it's grown, and so each culture kind of views it a little differently. They have a little different print on it.
Yeah, I only know a little bit of the history of Japan. I realized like pre-COVID or during COVID, like how little I really knew about Asia in general, right? So that's when I started getting into Korean dramas, Chinese, Japanese things. And I was like, I didn't know so much, or my idea of what Japan was so small, right? It was Miyazaki. Of course, I'm like a fan of all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
but there is so much to it. And then when I did a little research into when Christianity first got there and how hard that was, right? And going other places. When I travel and I go to temples, obviously, because it's such a huge part of a culture. Like that is, I'm so curious as to what it feels like. And with my woo woo, like I was at a temple. I'm forgetting the name. It starts with a B. Boo.
In Japan or
No, it's in Korea.
in Korea?
But there, I saw a monk and he was praying, and everyone was being very respectful. I was very grateful. I'm like, it might not be my faith, but I'm not going to interfere in yours. But as he was praying, I saw ribbons of white. Like I could feel the love and his faith like coming out of him. And for me, it was an amazing moment. And when I returned to that same temple on my second visit, the energy there is just so peaceful and loving. And we had been traveling for a few days. There were like six of us girls. And I was like, I need just a few minutes alone. And they're like, and I just went and like meditated, like, and to connect with all of that, like love and kindness. Because in the world, there's so little that like, I'm like, I will take it anywhere. Like, even back in the day in college, when I was in like Paris and I was at Sacré-Cœur, I'm bad at French. People don't judge me. But I went up there right before it closed. It was night and it's just lit by candles, just like it was back in the day. And it's not my faith, but again, I could feel all the love and belief of people there. And so I just got really quiet and my friend was praying and I just like kept her company. And it felt like so lovely to be able to experience something like that. So I think you should own the pastor's wife thing. Just saying, like, I think it's a big part of who you are. I do wonder how you interpret some of like the metaphors then and the like mysticism, I guess I would call it, in Japanese culture, or like the rules of men and women there. I
I'm
know that
trying to
was a
figure out
lot.
what.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was
Where do I
like,
start?
rules of men
So
and women and mysticism.
right, like so like in story, we'll keep it to storytelling, right?
Okay.
Like I know you talk about like anime or stuff, or like you talk about like in the Water Child, right? You touch on the I don't want to say it wrong. You say it. The Mizuku Kuyo?
Yeah, the musical Jesus.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that. So like, you talk about how they process grief or how they deal with things, and I'm just wondering how that works for you.
Yeah, I think I mean it's such a big topic and um with grief, I think in that particular story in The Water Child, it's how they view miscarried or aborted babies, babies who, don't see the light of day. And depending on the historical context, sometimes it's even for young children. Japan views it as a life, which in America, a lot of people would be outraged about that. But in Japan, traditionally, that is how they view it, that it is life and it is sacred. And so we honor it and we grieve and we process that by giving gifts, by praying, by remembering. And I think that is truly a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that said, there's all kinds of things around that issue, but that's one of the ways that they process grief in that's explored in that book. And then with storytelling, there's just so much in Japanese storytelling. They do a 4-act structure usually, and it's all focused on a twist at the end. Um, and anime and manga, of course, use that all the time. And I can also pull out like little threads of faith in those stories of how characters are processing their beliefs, their hopes, their dreams, always wanting to be stronger, always wanting to believe the best in others or to find the truth about themselves. Like these universal themes, really.
Yeah, I love that. So like, I've had 3 miscarriages, so for me when I like did a little dive into what that was, I was like, that would be nice because so many people around me were like, "Well, you're fine though." Do you know what I mean? They're like, it was very dismissive of the loss here. Like, oh,
Mm,
that wasn't a baby yet, or, better than something else happening. I'm like, but what, then what? Like, it's a loss. It's like a grieving process. So I had, for me personally, like challenges with finding soft places to land in my grief, which is why I think I write about it a lot, right? Like the family dynamics and whatnot. You also write a lot about family. And I was wondering what inspires those stories for you.
I think just family is so special. Like I love my family, and I think everyone has a family. And our families might not be perfect, but we all have family. It's universal. And I really love old like classics like Les Mis or Little Dorrit, Bleak
Mm.
House, Wuthering Heights, those
Little
kinds of things.
Dorrit, shut up.
Yes, and they all revolve around family. There's this complicated mess that comes with being in a family because we're people, and humans do messy things. And
So,
how do
like,
you
how did
let
that
people
start
do
for
that?
the last Wayfinder? Because that's about, right? So what was the initial spark for that one?
For that one, I, live in Japan, and so I'm walking down the street and I see all these historical tiles depicting, steamships and, Japanese women carrying parasols and wearing Western gowns. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to write like a 1800s, late 1800s Meiji Restoration fantasy novel in Japan that had some of those deeper themes of Les Miserables or something like that. So I started exploring ideas with that. And at the same time, I was reading a biography by he's a botanist in Japan. I can't remember his name right now, but in his biography, he has all these details that are very factual about different wars, diplomacy that happened, incidents, and there's one mention of sea dragons in the bay. And it just, I remember rereading that passage thinking, are these boats? Is it they have a dragon boat ceremony in Japan. I was like, maybe that's what he's talking about. But he said it was the emperor's boat pulled by sea dragons. And I thought, well, that would be quite something to write about. And so that's where that spark came from.
I love that. Now I'm trying to imagine what they really did. What do you think it really was?
I think maybe it was the dragon boat race, but it wasn't written in that sense. And he usually writes very detailed about all of the experiences he went through. So it was interesting.
Do you think someone made him write that?
No, I
Ooh,
mean
I'm like, this is fascinating.
maybe it was like a Loch Ness monster kind of thing.
I was like, maybe they like had boats in front of it pulling his boat and they dressed it, or did they make people swim? I don't know. Like I love that. I
Yeah.
could see how your imagination would go from there. So how much longer are you going to be living in Japan? Like is this long term or will you be there for your life? I know you travel back and forth to the States too.
This is one of those fun questions you don't get if you're not like an expat or a
Mm.
gaijin. So I don't know. I don't know the future, like how long I'll be here, but my heart is here and I want to stay here as long as
I
I
didn't want to
can.
say gaijin. I was really trying not to use that word because I don't know if it's nice.
Ah, well, I mean, it's one of those words. It's not nice for someone else to call you that word, but you can call yourself that word and you make up jokes with the word and all of that. So we even
It's
talk
on
about like
my
a gaijin card, or like we have a little card we can play, that we're foreigners, we didn't know. But we don't do
oh,
that.
sure. So,
Other
like,
people do.
how fluent are you now? You must be so fluent in
I'm actually
Japanese.
not. And this is one of
Really?
my, yeah, it's really
Shut
sad.
up.
I have
Can you
three
go to
kids.
the store and get groceries
Of
or
course. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm
what does fluent then mean
conversational.
for you?
Fluent would be being able to read. I'm
Hmm.
illiterate, which is quite hard for an author.
You can't read it?
I can read the hiragana and the
Hmm.
katakana and then some kanji, but
Right.
not enough to just have like a nice reading experience. I have to pull out my translator and look up all the kanji.
Do you
So
use Papago? Which one do you use?
I just use Google Translate or DeepL.
No,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be real. I think it's a very hard language. Like I tell all the people, like I have tried to learn Korean for years. I've taken a bunch of classes, but because I'm not around anyone that I can practice with, I can read it like a 2-year old. Like, I can sound out. I mess up the bottom. Like I know I am. I can't always get the sound out of my mouth correctly. But like when I get there, I seem to know enough to get through. Do you know what I mean? Like and they have kiosks everywhere and you can just tap English.
Right. In Japan, you can usually tap English if you're in a big city like Tokyo. And for me, it's my husband's fluent, so I'm always like, "Oh, could you do this?" And so it's a bit of a crutch. And then raising three kids as well and writing lots of books has kept me busy. So I should be studying the language more. And I'm working on it. I study every day, just a little bit. So
So, are your kids fluent? I'm assuming. Yes, no?
yeah, they're all fluent.
Wow. So, what you are, while we're recording this, you're in the process of doing a Kickstarter. When this airs, it will be a smash success. But like, I want to know, like, where the idea to do a Kickstarter and the energy to do it. Like, where does that come from with you?
Okay, so I had talked a little earlier about my small press experience. And so with that, I had gotten my rights back from that small press, which was not an easy feat at all. And I would say that was more difficult than everything with the own voices experience and querying. So once I had my rights back, I had to decide, I now have control of my publishing. What am I going to do with these stories? How am I going to get them out to readers? And the first book, Saints and Monsters, I had to release quickly to keep all of my reviews. And so I did that with a whirlwind and then thought about it. And a lot of my friends had been doing Kickstarter to fund their indie books. It's kind of a way to cover all of the basic costs for the production and then maybe have a little extra to work as kind of an advance for yourself or to work on next books. And so I thought, well, I'm trying new things, so let's go for it. And did a lot of research, launched the Kickstarter, and I remember the day before I had one of the Kickstarter authors message me and said, I hope you know your Kickstarter is going to do really well and you should prepare yourself. And I thought, what? Like, I hadn't prepared for a success, but I should, believe in myself and do that. And so I did. And the day that it launched, it just funded within 16 minutes. And it's been going steadily up since. And yeah, so I'm confident it's just going to be a great way to push out these indie books.
I'm like, I should have been prepared for success. That's like the quote of the day. Why wouldn't I love that? You did. You posted that you fully funded in 16 minutes. Like, do you think it's because you set a reasonable goal? Do you think you should go for a bigger one next time? Like, I'm so curious. And like, where do you start? Like, how do you even start the whole like, oh, this is the work that goes into Kickstarter? Because I don't know. What is that like?
So Kickstarter for publishing is different from Kickstarter for other projects. But for publishing, they say do your research, read books on, Kickstarter for authors, join Facebook groups. There's 2 or 3 of them that are fabulous. And then get a good cover, get the good artwork. Like you have to invest in your art for your art to be successful. And I know artists don't like hearing that a lot of times. You just want to make it and it's going to thrive without any of the marketing, but you do have to dress it up usually. I mean, there's always exceptions, but having that visual element on the Kickstarter really helps. And so I made sure to just check all of those boxes and it worked.
Yeah, the illustration, I want to say anime, the illustration is quite beautiful and very captivating and it grabs your attention. I feel like you have an eye for that because even for The Water Child, right? When
Mm-hmm.
that book came out, I won one of your giveaways and it was really like I don't even think you knew that you pulled me. And to this day, I have my stickers of cherry blossoms. This is one of my favorite things. I have these cherry blossoms and I put it on the luggage and I stuck them to the outside of my bag that I do big trips with. And the first time I had covered my little piece of luggage, it's not a very American size. It's like a 26-inch bag, which, for Americans is small. Anyway, so right, it is though. Do you know what I'm saying? Because usually they have the 28 plus whatever. So I had this one bag and I went to Korea. But before I did that, I think I went to Colorado and some of the cherry blossoms fell off and they got
No.
on. No, no, but this is the best part. So as the bag was coming down the baggage carousel, there was a little boy, like he maybe 4, tops 5, adorable little boy. He goes, Daddy, Daddy, my bag has flowers on it now. So like
So
for me, your story like went other places that like it just kept going. And I just really loved the thought that your work, your words, and something that you created was reaching people you would never know. I think that's like the magic of storytelling. So
it
I always
truly
wanted
is.
to tell you
Yeah.
that. I just never did
Oh, thank
before.
you. I
So
love that story. That is so sweet.
you've talked about how storytelling is healing. So are there things that you've read or that have helped heal you?
And books that I've read that have helped heal me, I would definitely say the Bible, which I know is very cliche for Christians to say, but it's a very important one for me and my faith, and those scriptures have carried me through a lot of things, and so that is definitely one of them. And then another would be probably books by Makoto Fujimura. So he writes Silence and Beauty. It's a book about the book Silence by Endo, and then also his experience in 9/11. And it's about art as well because he's a painter. And it's kind of how we heal through grief. And it's highly recommended. Um, and another book I really enjoyed was Walking on Water by
Mm.
Ellen Engel. It's an excellent book. And that was her creative journey, um, about what does it mean to be a Christian artist and kind of, looking at how she's traveled with her faith over the years and her stories. And so I think those 3 are my favorite like healing books. And there's a few psychology ones too that I would go to because I love reading books on trauma.
Do you?
Yeah, like The Body Keeps the Score, and things like
Oh,
that. So,
yeah.
the traditional ones,
I love
For
that.
Man's Search for Meaning by Frankl.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest losses that you've like endured that shaped you?
I would say the biggest one was probably a church trauma loss that I had. And that was when we were in Japan early on. And we were with a different church, and we experienced narcissism in the church and how harmful
Ooh.
that is. And that was very damaging because you feel like your faith and the place and community where you exercise that faith should be safe. And we discovered that not all the people were safe, right? And I think that's an important realization to know. And you can hold on to your faith, but you have to push out what's unsafe and really look at it for yourself. And for me, that was going through the Bible and reading it for myself without the context of what that particular church and the individuals who had been hurtful, and just making my faith really my own and holding on to it and getting out the things that didn't belong there. And so I think that's something really important for church community to talk about, especially because you want a healthy church, a healthy community. Very important. And so I read a lot of those books around that time. And then that kind of prepared me for later with my book rights. That was another trying
Hmm.
time because it was another safe place. And I think that's where trauma gets us, is what's supposed to be safe. And then we find that it isn't, is usually one of those triggers.
That is what I'm actually writing about now in like memoir. I talked earlier in my podcast with an author. Her name is Judy Goldman. She's 83 now, I believe, and she's a memoirist and she just came out with the latest book. And I've been holding off on sharing some of my stories because I didn't know how to like package it. I didn't know what the spine of the story was. I didn't want to just be like daddy issues. Like that was my joke. I was like, oh, it's just going to be called daddy issues. Um, but I didn't actually do that because I knew I was being sarcastic and deflecting, right? So I was like waiting, and in speaking with her and her beautiful Southern accent, she said, Holly, it sounds like you need to write about home. And then that was the zinger for me, that she could hear during our conversation like what I was struggling with, and then was generous enough to literally gave me the spine. That's the book that I have like 8,000 words on in a few weeks now. Just that it was like, oh my God, I have my spine. I wrote all the chapter outline. Like I just knew every story that and how it, I don't know how it'll all go together. I don't write linearly. I know that's so surprising. But like for me, it is about the word safety. I want home to be safe. And what does that mean? And what hasn't it meant? And why wasn't it? Despite how
Right.
pretty it might be.
And what is safe? Like, we don't necessarily want to live for safe, and that we're afraid of the things that are unsafe, right?
Correct.
And so how do we find that safety and make that safety for other people as well? Like going to kind of being the thermostat instead of a thermometer. Like, how do you set the room to be a place that is safe? How do you bring that to wherever you're at, like your family, your church, your books? How do you bring that safety into a place? That's something that I think about a lot too.
I love that. And I think in the world today, there's a lot of people who are reactionary, and that they just think because they feel something in a moment or they tap into outrage or a heightened emotional state, no one's giving anyone tools to be like, to have when you're being emotional. Cause I always tell everyone I'm super moody. I'm super moody. And things probably hurt me way more than people have any idea, because I won't show it to people I don't trust who aren't in my super inner circle, because I feel like friendships are things that are interesting for me, right? Friendships don't last forever. I tend to welcome narcissists into my life, right? Because there's something interesting and exciting because they do that thing that narcissists do, right? I'm wondering if that was like part of what happened in, right, your church, in that like you had this drawing in. Yes, we're like minded. Yes, we have the same value, only to discover you don't.
And it's also, you can actually have the same value and still have that abuse or, an unsafe person in that community. And the hard thing is when that's in a position of leadership or a position
Mm.
of power, whether we're talking the church or the home or somewhere else, when it's someone who has authority over others that can set that room for other people. It can make everything unsafe.
So how do you weave hope into your stories? Like, is that conscious or unconscious?
Very conscious. Hope is like a rebellion. Hope is, it is just this thing that defies what is. You hope because you don't have that yet. You hope because there's something that's broken and you want it to be whole. And I think we're all reaching for that. And I think we all have wounds. And I like to think of in Japan, we have, the broken pottery that's minted with gold, the
Yes.
suji. And so I have some friends who are actually artists that do that. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it takes so much time and the pigments and seeing how you can take that brokenness and put it into something beautiful. It's hope that does that. If you didn't have hope, you wouldn't even try. Like, why would you put gold into something that might just break again? Like, that would be a waste. You have to hope that it's going to fit together, that it's going to be beautiful again. And so I think it's something we all want.
I love you and I see that word so different. I'm like fascinated by this right now. First of all, it's kitsugi. Is that how you say it? I always say it.
Suji,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
It's like one of my tenants. I was like, oh my God, the broke gold. I think for me in some of my life is that I call it a goal instead of hope because sometimes when I've hoped, I felt so out of control
Mm,
and I felt not victimized, but a bit if I'm looking back, especially on my younger self, like if I have hope and no one comes, if I have hope and no one hears me, right? And even though I can have faith, my faith is not like yours, right? So what did hope do? I don't know. So like there's that part of me that is just I call it certainty instead or like my belief because something about hope can linger. And I think sometimes people hang on to hope without evaluating like a role or a responsibility or how to make it better, even though you can't ultimately control everything. I think my brain, which is funny because I write magical realism, right? But my brain goes there. So I love how peaceful your idea of hope is.
it's peaceful in a sense, in another sense, not, because again, it's kind of like a rebellion. It's like you're hoping, but like you said, you don't know, if it is going to hold up, but you're choosing to. You're like, yes, it will. I'm investing my time. I'm doing this because I have faith in that. And it's a scary thing if you're unsure. It's very frightening. But you're right, as a person of, Christian faith, my hope is ultimately in Jesus. And so I feel confident in that. But when we're talking about like goals, for example, like this Kickstarter, I would use the term goal for that one because I hope would be like what that person told me before the day before of your campaign's going to do well. You need to believe in yourself. They were daring me to hope
I think they were giving you
before,
like a message, like, right? Like a message from like God or an angel. Hey, we see you. You got this.
right? Yeah. Before it was just a goal to me. And it's like, if it failed, that would be disappointing, but I wasn't like, you know, it has to happen. Um, and so it's interesting how those words all have different meanings to different people. And yeah.
Okay, so Kickstarter is successful. Your book is like, how are you distributing? How does it work being in Japan? I mean, the world is flat. We can go any which way. So who are you trusting with that part? Because some of the bigger companies online, we'll just say that, right? There's issues. Like they've taken my book down twice, telling me it's copied. And then I have
What?
to like, yeah, they took all my work down, all my work down. Like another author who wrote like a fiction book but used my title and my font got me kicked off of Amazon.
Wow.
And then it took me like a month to get back on, but then I am very detail oriented this way, and I have all of the proof. And then at the beginning of the summer, they did it again, saying your book is a fraud. It's a copy of someone else's work. I was like, well, back in 2022, you did the same thing, and here's the outcome, and here's the case number. So could you please stop?
Yeah, I think certain companies take issues very seriously and abruptly. And so it's definitely something to watch out for as authors. Like the copyright issue with AI that just happened, for instance, a lot of authors found out they did not have their books copyrighted, even though their books are with big five publishers. And so they weren't then in the lawsuit to get the money from the AI corporations after all of that, which was a big deal. But for Kickstarter, you can drop ship your books from a printer. And there's several
Ooh.
printers that do that, yes. So to do that, you also have to think about people want a limited edition book. So they usually want it signed. And so for my books, that meant a digital signature because I can't order them to Japan, sign all of the books, and then mail them, wherever they're going in the world. And so I had to make a digital signature page for each of the books. So, and the other fun thing is that the shipping with the tariffs,
I
that
was going to ask
suddenly
that.
changed. Oh, yes. So a few days before the Kickstarter launch, I was checking the Japan Post, because I was going to send some signed copies with, special swag. And the Japan Post had a message in bold red, and it said, for US mail, we are no longer receiving. Like, you have to make sure it's a gift under $100, and it can't be any kind of merchandise. Um, and I know the Japan Post. They ask you a million questions when you go in, especially if you're at a smaller post office. And so I wouldn't be able to mail, a book from Kickstarter because that is merchandise. And so legally, people have been saying, print shouldn't, be included in that minimum that was, gotten rid of, but they threw everything in it. So a lot of the Kickstarters are kind of in limbo.
That's crazy. I know some other authors who, even being traditionally published, are running into, they keep saying the cost of paper. So because of the tariffs, the cost of paper has gone up. So the cost of books has gone up.
The cost has definitely gone up. Yeah. So when you're running a Kickstarter, it's tricky because already just on, Amazon or whatever retail platform your book is on, trying to keep it low, the price for a reader, because we don't want to spend $20 on a book usually. We're
Hmm.
pinching pennies, but the cost of paper is so high and shipping has gone up. So authors, they're having to price their books, hardbacks now are $25, $30, and that's standard because the cost is so high just to produce it.
It's like heartbreaking because for us authors, we work without getting paid. Right? You're creating, you're writing the story, you're doing the drafts. Like, how many drafts do you do in a book average now? Now that you've been proficient and prolific, how many drafts does it usually take before you're satisfied?
I do what they tell you not to do, which is to revise as you are going. And so I will draft and then go back and edit it. So how many
Oh, and
drafts is
you're an editor.
difficult
I
to
should say
say.
you're an actual editor, so maybe a little different.
Yeah, so I have to turn off the editing hat when I'm writing, but then the next day when I open my manuscript, I go back a few chapters and reread and
Ooh,
edit.
a few
And I kind of,
chapters?
yes, it's a very bad habit. And so it takes me a long time to finish a proper draft. And then once that's done, I go back and read through it. I used to say like 3 times for different edits and then send it off to professional editors because even editors need editors. You need other people's perspective on your work. And then there's the proof copies. So how many times I read my book, I don't think I've counted.
Wow. So then you write linearly.
It depends on the novel. So I usually do a linear progression, but sometimes if I'm really stuck, writer's block, I will skip a scene and write something in the middle or the end.
Is that when you go for a walk? Like, I saw that you had like answered interviews. Like, so share with other people now, like, what do you do when you get stuck on something?
I usually go out in nature because that is the best place for inspiration and just activity, to get your body moving. And so I'll go on a nature walk or I'll go out, downtown to some cute cafe or something. Tokyo has all of these little cafes hidden in little shops, and you're always seeing something interesting. And so that's what I usually do. And my favorite place is there's a big bamboo forest. And how can you not be inspired, in a giant bamboo forest?
It's one of my dreams to go to. I have not been in one yet. I've been in like pockets of bamboo, but that's not like a forest. And there is also, it was on a Japanese show. It was, what was it? It was like, I think it was Married at First Sight in Japan. Did you ever see this?
No, I pretty much only watch anime and the very
Okay.
rare Japanese movie.
But there is it's like it's a forest and it's well known as the Nara deer, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
but
Mhm.
okay, but I don't know the name of the forest. So maybe you can help me because I can't find it anymore. The name, it's like it's dissolved in my brain. But it looks like mangroves. It's almost like it's like these islands of trees, but not just roots. They're like these little islands with paths in between, but water, but it's not a swamp. And they did an episode there. And this tea house that they found was, a very old home. And it was just so, I was like, oh my God, I've never seen a place in the world that looked like that. And I was like, if I went there, I can't imagine what my imagination would do. And I always think of you. And I was like, has she been there?
I'm really
Have you?
curious now. It sounds like something on Shikoku, like that island, but Nara does have lots of old trees and forests, and I think I've seen some brochures about something like that. You have to take like a bus to or something.
I'm going to have to go find that.
I've been to Nara, but the
Yeah.
traditional
That
sites, feeding the deer, the little senbei
I'm like,
crackers,
I'm nodding for anyone who doesn't know
Yes,
because the deers nod because they're like, give me my
yes.
food, give me my
And they
food,
are vicious.
forest.
They're vicious.
They're vicious.
Have you been there?
No, Japan is on my list of places to go. I think the next
Okay.
time, when I went to Korea last time, there used to be a Beetle, which is a high speed ferry between Busan and, again, I can't speak Japanese, Fuka something.
Fukui, maybe?
Fukuoka. I don't see. People are gonna like judge me. Fukuoka, yes,
Okay, Fukuoka.
I
Nice.
love him. Fukuoka. So and it was like I was trying to get me and my friends to do it. They're like, I was like, I'm not going across the world if I can't go to Japan this time. Like if I'm going to be there, I want to go. And they shut down the Beetle. They shut it down. Like I don't think there was enough people doing it, but it was like a whole experience where they had the rooms that you could be in with the heated floor and get quiet, or you could go here and do this activity and that activity. And it was like 4 hours. So it was super high speed. Oops, I hit my mic. Super high speed. And I really wanted to do it, but they didn't have it anymore. And then the regular ferry was like 3 times as long and it didn't arrive until midnight, like past midnight. And I didn't really want to show up in a city that I didn't know at all like that. And I was like, oh, so it is on my places I really must go and see list. So,
Korea's on one of mine too. I'm
well,
like, it's so
I'm
close.
definitely
It's
going
right
back.
there.
It's right there. I can hook you
I know,
up.
it's
I
right
have
there.
friends. I have friends. I can tell you what to do. Oh my gosh. With
Yeah.
your family too, the whole shebang.
They all want to go.
I feel so at home there. I tell everyone this. I don't know why. Because, I'm not downplaying how bad I am at speaking Korean. I'm awful. But there is something about like the culture and the cities, and I don't know if it's because it's a monoculture, and I know that comes with pluses and minuses. I'm not ignorant, but there's like standards of politeness, of cleanliness, of I just like everything, the food, the culture, everyone's like, you like that? I'm like, I love it. I just feel at home. Like in my bones, I am just like, oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be, which makes no sense for a girl who like grew up on Long Island, an American to like be that at home. I'm assuming you must feel that at home in Japan because it is your home.
I definitely feel that way in Japan. And it's hard to communicate that as a foreigner living here, a long-term resident, because I am American. I grew up in America, but my family was Army, so we moved around all the time. And then when I came to Japan, it just was that feeling. And I had been here several times before we moved here, and I had felt it then. Like I had felt it the first time I visited Japan was this, I feel a sense of belonging in this place and in this culture. And I wanted to learn more about it. And then now that I've lived here, I still feel that. But it's a bit of a there's a tear because I feel at home, but I'm also other, right?
Yeah.
I'm always reminded that I'm different every day because I don't live in like a Western bubble here. It's very much a Japanese community. There's some parts of Tokyo that are very Western tourist friendly, but I do not live in one of those. And so I'm really in the culture and with, people. But at the same time, there is a foreign community. There are these little sub pockets, but they're not what you would think. Like we have, immigrants from all over Asia, from the Middle East, different places, and everyone's trying to figure out, where do I belong, like within this culture, and how do I fit in? We all want to, and so it's interesting talking with other people who are kind of third culture who live here, because I think a lot of people have that experience.
Yeah, I love that theme of like belonging or not belonging and how that connection happens or doesn't, right? Like I've
Mhm.
had amazing interactions with people in Korea, mostly older, who are just like, "Oh, you're trying so hard," right? Like you're trying so hard, or because I am Ajima age, which is in theory middle-aged woman, a level of respect. I know if I spent more time there, I would still always be other. And a lot of people, I think, label themselves with all their 100 million labels of their identity, which most of the time I just don't care. I'm like, I'm looking at who you are as you show up in front of me and around me and all of that. But I don't know anyone who doesn't feel a little othered. I haven't met a
Mhm.
creative person who didn't feel a little outside of normal, right? And I think that's part of why we create is to make connections.
Absolutely. And I think it's not just creatives, it's everybody. Like everyone
Yeah.
has a sense of, I don't really feel like I belong. Everyone feels like are they on the inside in Japan? Like the inside outside is a big
Hmm,
deal.
hmm.
And people will say if they're on the inside, they made it. Or if you're on the outside, it hurts. But I think everyone really is kind of like walking on the border. Like you're in, but you're also, you feel a little out in some
Yeah.
sense. And that's where storytelling comes in because it shares that with everyone. And I think about some of the big anime in Japan, like One Piece. It's Luffy, the pirate, and the whole show is just him rescuing these friends and saying, "You belong. You're inside." And then seeing them struggle with, "But I feel like I'm outside," and him insisting, "No, no, no, you're in." And then seeing them realize that for themselves is like each arc of the the series as it goes on for 1,000 plus, you know, episodes.
I love that. I also love the pictures that you post when you're in your kimono. I have one that I have, it's not behind me. I have a beautiful kimono with storks, and I think it's actually authentic. I've had it for, I think, 30 years. I found it in
Wow.
yeah, I found it in a funky like antique place, and it was neglected in a little stain. It's white and it's pink, and the bottom is tufted so it stays in its shape. So I don't know if that makes it real or makes it not real, but it's stunning, and I have it on one of those beautiful poles, and I look at it all the time. It's just so inspiring. What are storks in Japanese like culture? What do they
It,
represent there?
it might be a crane,
Oh yeah, that's what I
is
meant, a
my
crane, a
guess.
crane. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it might be a crane. And I would think like wedding kind of kimono, like
Mm.
something you would wear on the outside of the wedding kimono, because it's usually like luck or fidelity. There's probably other meanings too, but
I
that's the
love it.
first thing that jumps to
It's in
mind.
my bedroom. It's good for that. Like both of those are good. Luck and fidelity. I'll take both.
There you
I'll
go.
take both.
Yeah, I remember one time my kimono teacher, she had an obiage, like the sash that you put on top
Yeah, yeah.
of kind of the belt that goes around your waist. and it was white with golden cranes. And she said it was for a wedding because of the luck that it brought. So
I will definitely post it, I think, when I start promoting this so everyone can like see that part. I kept it in a closet. I had it professionally cleaned like a couple of times because it had gotten stained. And I was coveting it. I just thought it was so beautiful. And then I was like, why am I hiding this in protective plastic? Like a grandmother, like my grandma in her apartment, right? Like her sofa was in plastic. I don't know. So now I have it and I just get to admire that. So anyway, what
yeah, I
is
love
what is
kimono.
I know you look good in them too, by the way. What's your next great thing? Now Kickstarter's out, your books are out. People want to read more. Are you going to stick with fantasy?
So I have one more book in my series that's releasing. It's a series of interconnected standalones, and it starts with Saints and Monsters, and then it goes to The Last Wayfinder. There's two more books that will be releasing probably this year and then the year after that are within that same series. And it's all kind of like Meiji Restoration, Japan, but with dragons. And some of that East meets West vibes that I'm bringing to it because that's part of my story. And it's all young adult. And then after that, I do have some other projects, but I have not finished them. So I'm not talking
Okay.
about them yet.
Okay. I didn't know like if you're like, oh, keep that secret.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you? Where do you want them to go find and follow and get your books?
Yeah. So all of my books are on Amazon, that giant store. They're on KU, Kindle Unlimited, and on Audible. They will all be in audiobook. And I have an amazing narrator. They
Ooh.
won awards. So highly recommend the audio version, especially of Saints and Monsters. This one here. And then you can also find them at libraries because now we can have KU books in libraries. So wonderful. And then in the future, I might be expanding some of those books to different platforms. But as of now, that and Barnes and Noble as well.
And then your website, do you want them to follow you like on Instagram or your website?
Yes, and you can follow me on Instagram where I post all of my Japan and manga, anime, book news, and marketing tips and things like that. And then also my website for my editing. My editing information is up on my website.
Yeah. Did you watch Blue Eyed Samurai?
I did not.
It was
I
good.
couldn't tell if that one would be too graphic for me.
Oh.
I some
I don't
okay,
like
so
violence. I don't like violence. I don't watch it in general. I don't remember it being too violent. Like I know some historical Japanese shows are too violent for me. That one I don't remember. I don't have
or
that
No Spies.
reaction.
I tend to watch No Spies
Okay.
and limited violence, but it really depends because I'm a huge fan of Kaiju 8, which is
Yeah.
monster gore. So
What's the other one? Oh my gosh, my brain. There's a very famous actor. He has the Netflix one about the band is out right now. And he does like ah, I should have written this part down, but he does a samurai. It's two parts. It starts with a K. Is a movie and it's amazing. He's like I'll send that to you
it's a
privately. I'll
live
cut this
action
part.
movie.
Hmm.
Is it historical?
Yes.
Is it Rurouni Kenshin?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, those are amazing. I've seen all of those. Those are
Okay.
great.
Okay. I'm like, I
Yeah,
love those. Okay.
yeah, those are based on a manga and it has an anime as well and the live actions and
So good.
really, really great storytelling.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
thanks for coming. I like to end every episode with asking my guests the same question. And that is if you came with a warning label, what would it be?
I think mine would be that I'm a hobbit, and so I will probably keep my door a little closed and have tea by myself. But I'm an introvert, so I think that's my warning label. Just be prepared.
I am the same. I was actually telling my producer, Andy, before we started, I was like, he's like, I'm a night owl or whatever. I'm like, I'm neither. Because if I could be alone, I'll just close the door. And people always find that very surprising, but I really need that time.
I do find that surprising.
I know, shock. It's true though. It's so true. See, that's the moody part. I love the connection and then I run away and then I connect.
Recharge and refill.
That's how
Yep.
I do it. So thank you, Ellen, so much for being a guest on the Holly Hughes podcast. If you liked it, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and follow, and we'll see you again soon.